Um, I'm going to start out very briefly today with this little intro that allows us all to make sure we're on the same page in terms of using the GoToWebinar interface before I hand things over to our presenter, Mark Scott. And also I'll briefly show you how to get to the recorded version of this webinar because we are recording, which will be posted on VCGI's YouTube page. So what you see before you is obviously a little picture of the GoToMeeting interface. And the first thing I want to point out is that if you find that it's in your way, first of all, you can move it around a little bit. You can also collapse it down by clicking on this orange button with the arrow in it. And then if you want to open it back up again, like to type a question, you click on that same little arrow. You'll find that this little mini panel will always be on your page as long as you're still on the webinar and the webinar is going. If you're having any audio problems, you can't hear me right now, but hopefully you can see this, and you'll notice me gesturing towards the audio section of your panel. You open up that section by clicking on the little plus sign next to audio, and then just make sure that you've got your audio settings properly set for whatever you're doing, whether you're using a telephone or mic and speakers. If you are using a phone, make sure that you don't use the phone number that's here, but use the phone number that's actually on your panel. That'll be the right phone number for calling in. If you would like to submit questions at any time during the webinar, you can do so using the questions part of your panel. And you don't have to worry about interrupting the webinar because the questions are actually going to come to me while Mark is speaking. And if there's a question that seems appropriate to interrupt, I might, but probably I'll save most of the questions till the end and then I'll read them and he'll be able to answer them at that time. I mentioned that it's going to be recorded and I'll show you how to get to the YouTube page. Before I close this down, I also want to point out this little button, this little icon that looks like an orange hand with a green arrow on it. That's the raise your hand button. So if everybody could just click on that right now, that helps me to know that you can actually hear me, to make sure that I actually started the broadcast. Great, thank you. Okay, all right, I'm going to get out of this and go over to the VCGI website. So VCGI website is vcgi.vermont.gov, Vermont written out. And you can see that over on the left side of our main page, underneath our contact information, there's a little row of social media icons that say connect with us above them. And the one all the way on the right is the YouTube link. And that will take you to the Vermont Geospatial YouTube channel. And you can see that this is where I post our recorded webinars. So within, let's see, I probably am not going to get to it today and I'm out tomorrow. So sometime early next week, before Christmas, I'm going to post this recorded webinar. All right, that's all I have to say. So I'm going to pass things over to Mark Scott from ESRI, and he is going to teach us about Collector, Navigator, and Operations Dashboard. Looks good.
Okay, is we up?
Yep.
Excellent. Okay, thanks, Leslie. Good afternoon, everyone. So my name's Mark Scott, and I am on the Solutions Engineering team for ESRI. For those of you who don't know, I've been here for quite a while, and I'm currently assigned to the County Government and Regional Government Support team. So part of the job that I do is outreach, stuff like this, so user groups and seminars and whatnot. So thanks a lot for having me here today, and hopefully the topics that I present, you'll find them informative and helpful. And if anyone has any questions whatsoever, please feel free to email me. So it's just mscott@esri.com. And also I will make a copy of this the presentation is a PDF, and I'll get that to Leslie, and so then you know folks can download it or do whatever they'd like in addition to having the recording, because you know, sometimes it's just nice to have a copy of the slides. So I will do that. So let's get started. So what I'm going to talk about today are a bunch of the apps that we have currently and also upcoming that support field data collection. So this sort of comes into this whole swarm, I guess I'd call it, of applications that we're currently building. So I want to talk about that and how they all sort of tie back into the ArcGIS platform as a whole. So the apps that we have are currently being built to support the online platform, the server side, the desktop, and pretty much everything. So all those pieces and parts. The main focus today is going to be on Collector, but as the title indicated, I'm also going to talk about some of these other applications that we have that are both current and being used and have been around for a while, like Ops Dashboard, ones that are very new, like Navigator, and then apps that are on the way. So we'll talk about that. And I also want to go over the whole process of building the data, the maps and the data before you actually start publishing. And I think that's really important. This is this presentation, or a superset of, or a subset of, I've probably presented about a dozen times in the last 6 months. It's been very popular. People are really starting to get into using Collector and mobile field data collection. So it's been kind of an exciting time. People are really interested in doing this. We just did one for the New England GIS users meeting, and it went really well. We actually had people here with their devices running outside the building and inside the building using Collector, and it was kind of a good time. And we did that up at NEARC too. So we're going to be running a bunch more of these as time goes by. So hopefully, maybe we can get up to Vermont and do one up there too. Okay, so that's what we're going to talk about here, and I'm going to start sort of just by doing an overview of what exactly are we talking about with this platform thing and all the things that the Collector works with. So we've been sort of using this term WebGIS for a little while now, and just talking about how the integration of GIS into the whole web space has really opened up a lot of doors for other folks to use the power of GIS. Not just us being like the GIS professionals, but other folks, like people that are going out in the field and collecting data, or just executives or casual users who just want to use and leverage the data. They're not necessarily doing any creation of data or analysis. They just want to the whole ArcGIS Online structure. And one of the key parts of this is the portal. And when I'm going to use this term portal when I refer to ArcGIS Online, or I could use the term portal when I refer to an ArcGIS for Server instance that is being used to host geographic data and then being shared out to other folks through the network. So there's like there is a product called Portal for ArcGIS, which sits on top of Server. And then there is this, ArcGIS Online, which is our online cloud-based portal. So, but think of those as in many ways they're interchangeable, because they both use the same technology to communicate with an application or an individual. So that's we call that the portal technology, and that's like portal with a small p, because it's not a product. It's just like a set of tools. And this provides all of this structure that we can set up to do not just mapping and analysis and the GIS things that we do, but also data acquisition and data management. So when we built this application called Collector, it came from a lot of things that were sort of industry concepts that people had, and communications that came back to us. What do you folks want in a like a mobile field data application? And a lot of this came from questions that people were asking and considerations that they had. So things like, we don't want to be able to run on a lightweight, inexpensive device. Sure, like a Toughbook is great. These Toughbooks and these ruggedized laptops are awesome. You can literally throw it on the ground. It'll bounce 3 or 4 times, and you can still use it. But they're very expensive. So something like an iPhone or an iPad or an Android phone, these are very extremely functional devices, as we all know, and they're a lot less expensive. So we have there's a different structure there. So sure, you're going to give up some of the ruggedness, but the price point is a lot more accessible. What kind of hardware do you need? Is there a certain requirement that you have to be able to run on a large format or a smaller format? Are you comfortable going out in the field and collecting data, say, on a small device like a phone? Is that okay? Or you say, no, I'm a lot more comfortable with like a tablet, something a little bigger where I have like more map space to see and the fonts are larger. So those things can make a big difference on what you want. There's also the desire to say, we want to be able to use something right off the shelf. I want to be able to like use my ArcGIS desktop, create something, and then use Collector and just go out and use it without having to have any like other sorts of add-ons to do things. IT restrictions could involve things like your organization has a standard. The standard is we use iOS devices. So we do not use Android devices. We will only allow like an iPhone or an iPad. And I put that in there because I actually ran into that in a meeting last year we had with the New York Power Authority, where we said the word Android, and the two IT people in the room made a bad face, and they said, we don't allow Android devices here at NYPA. It's like, okay, well, we flattened that, so we'll just stick right to the Apple platform. Speaking of platforms, when we talk about things that are coming up, I've got a couple of announcements on platforms. A couple of the things that I would recommend and mention is the idea of a pilot project. I'm going to mention this again when we actually start getting into the demonstrations. It's always good to do a small pilot project before you scale up to do the large-scale acquisition of data. So, for example, we were talking with a county in New Jersey. They're interested in doing a guardrail inventory across the entire county. So as you can imagine, that's a lot of guardrails. So we were like, what you want to do is you want to start with like one small part of a small town and work with that first. That way you can get through things like, oh, the symbology is no good, or the syncing that we're doing offline is not really working all that well, or the attachments that we're putting in are slowing down performance. You can like iron out all those things before you get started. I think that's always a really good idea when you're talking about doing these field data acquisition projects. Okay, so we took all of those things into consideration, and we were building this product called Collector. So Collector was a way for ArcGIS Online and the organization that's constructed around it or through the portal is a very straightforward and, I will use the word easy, way to build and maintain a set of authoritative data that's stored in your data sets. This can be data that you're collecting in the field. This could be new stuff, or it could be stuff that you're going out to ground truth. So you're saying, we have this inventory of catch basins in the city, what we really want to do, and we have these located very well, but we want to go out in the field and we want to do like a condition test on it. We want to say, what condition is it in? Does it look like the pavement's breaking around it? After a big storm or doing cleanouts, we want to be able to, in the field, mark, yes, we did a cleanout on this particular structure and send that back to the office. Okay, so there's a lot of different ways that a lot of different pieces and parts here that can be addressed. So it could be a combination of those as well. This is definitely a better workflow than, say, using like a notebook or even like taking a laptop out in the field. Using these devices that people are very familiar with and comfortable working with can really speed up the process. So what about Collector for ArcGIS in specific? So we can collect and update data. You can use the location from the device. So you do get a GPS signal, say from your iPad. It's not great. At best you might get like a 5 to 10 meter fix. That's kind of not typical. It's typically more like 10 to 30 meters. But you can use the GPS on the device. Maybe you're just going to use that to get yourself in the right area, and then you can use the map to specifically pinpoint the location. I'll talk a little later about higher accuracy data acquisition using Collector. You fill out the form, so the form is going to be inherited from the way you create the web map. I'm going to show that. Then you would capture media like pictures and videos. So you go out in the field and you say, okay, I'm going to take a picture of the asset, and then I'm going to go ahead and attach that to the specific feature, and then update that to my data set. Okay, there's a couple other tools in there like measuring, searching, being able to change base maps, which is always handy, getting sets of directions. So there's different pieces and parts that are going to work in there. You're not necessarily going to use all the tools. You might not need to. This may serve to augment an existing system that you have. It may replace an existing system that you have. That's all going to be determined probably by like the small scale project that you'll do first to decide, how you want to implement that. So making a map for collector is pretty straightforward. So from the desktop, from ArcGIS desktop ArcMap, okay, so using ArcMap, I would design my data set. So I'll create my geodatabase. I'll decide how I want to symbolize things. I'll decide how I want to enable control and content. So one of the key things is when you create a map for collector, you have to make sure that the layer that you're doing the collecting on is actually edit enabled. I mean, it's easy to skip past that, and I'll show you where to do that. If you're going to take layers offline, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit, you got to have sync enabled. So there's all these parameters and things that you want to be able to do. Very important to be able to leverage things like domains, subtypes, default values, and scale ranges. When you're creating a map, you want to create it and think in terms of, I'm creating something that's going to be used for data collection in the field. Doesn't have to be a super sophisticated map with complicated set of symbology. The idea is to make the field data collection procedure to be as easy as possible, as straightforward as possible. Having something like a domain for a condition on an asset, say we're out in the field and we're collecting conditions on fire hydrants. It would be great if we just had a pull-down list that said, good, very good, excellent, fair, poor, and then be able to just pick that from a list rather than having to type that in. Okay, so using domains and subtypes can help you do that. All right, and then scale ranges as well. So if we're going to create a map that's going to have multiple layers in it, I want to make sure that those layers appear in the correct scale range so my map isn't cluttered with stuff that's going to make it difficult for me to select a location or select a feature for collection. Those are really important things. Symbology for the end user. This again falls into that category of doing a small pilot project. You do the small pilot project and that's going to enable you to do something like go out in the field and see, oh wow, the symbols that I used when I've got a lot of sun on the iPad screen makes it really tough. It makes it really tough. I need like some simpler symbols, some darker symbols that are just maybe simple circles and squares or something like that. Okay, so those are considerations that you want to have in your mind when you're making the map. Only showing the fields in the form that the end user needs. Okay, so we've created these online layers, these feature services. We put those into the map. You know what? What you want to do is to turn off the fields in the data set that the end user, turn off the ones that the end user does not need. Okay, if you're sending a crew out and they're collecting, say, the condition code, a description, the name of the field crew, comments, and maybe weather. So there's 5 things. So there might be 55 columns in that data set because there's a whole bunch of other stuff that maybe comes from our SAP system or comes from our asset management system. Those might be things that you might have 4 or 5 columns that the user would like to be able to see, but not edit. So those are things to take into consideration. So just give them the information that they need and let them edit only the pieces of information that you want them to be able to edit. Okay. Also field aliases, if you've got complex column names, you've got like, AS underscore COD underscore 4, and that for some reason, that stands for like the 4th iteration of our condition code on the asset. We're preserving the other 3. Well, change that to an alias. Just call it like condition or something like that. Make it something that's easy for whoever's doing the data collection to understand. I'm going to talk about side-loading base maps when I talk about offline. Okay, so what about other applications that Collector can integrate with? Well, an example of that is going to be this app that's called Navigator. So Navigator for ArcGIS is I'm going to say brand new because I think it was just released like a few weeks ago. And Navigator is an app that can act independently from or in conjunction with Collector, as well as other applications like Explorer and upcoming applications that we have in the can. So one of the ideas with our app ecosystem is that they'll all be able to talk to each other and pass information back and forth. And the specific use of Navigator is by the name to do navigation from like one location to another. So say your crew is like out at a location and they do a bunch of collections, and then the next asset to be checked is in a whole different part of the city, and they're not familiar with that, and where that is. What you can do is you can have Navigator like immediately spark off a navigation path. Okay, so this works alongside the other applications, but one of the key delineations here is that you don't have to be online to use Navigator. So say I'm like up in an area in the wilderness or something, or I don't have a good 3G connection or 4G connection. I don't have any connection whatsoever. So what I can do is I can download these things called mobile map packages, and the mobile map package is going to be used on the device to do the navigation. In addition to that, you could create like an entire list of stops for the whole day's work and queue those up. And then as you go through with Collector and collect the information, it would then bounce over to Navigator and navigate you to the next location. It also provides turn-by-turn voice guidance and route detection. It doesn't matter if it's connected or not. And in the mobile map package are embedded a whole bunch of attributes that support things like I'm walking, I'm driving in a truck, and time of day. So it's going to pick up things like that and be able to work with that. Another thing about the use of the mobile map package, and this is something that's going to be coming in the next release. So we've just got the initial release of Navigator that's out now. The next release of Navigator, in conjunction with the next release of ArcGIS Pro, is going to let you create custom mobile map packages. So why is this important? Well, if say you're going out into the field, or you're going out into, say, like a state park that your state is managing, that you're responsible for working in, and you're going to these locations in the park, and these locations are off trails, so they're not off like any roads that like your Google map or your Bing map would have that you could use to navigate to. What you can do is you can create a custom mobile map package and integrate all that trail information. So then you could have the navigation come off the standard road system and then jump onto your customized mobile map package information. Okay, so that stuff is all coming. So similar to sort of like what we've done with Pro, where we released Pro so people can get used to it and start working with it, and now we're going to be adding stuff onto it as time goes by. It's the same thing with all the other apps. We have all of this functionality that we've got planned to build in, and we're going to start adding these things in, and we're going to integrate that in with Pro. So that's another one of the delineating characteristics of Navigator. Okay. So you can see here we've got in the roadmap. Right now, Navigator only runs on iOS, so on your Apple devices. It uses the included maps, works with ArcGIS Online, and it'll navigate, route, and search using the maps on the device. What we're working on is getting this plugged into Portal, getting it plugged in using custom maps, and supporting the other platforms, Android and Windows. Okay, so that's in development. Here's some links I've included to learn a lot more about Navigator. We've got all sorts of pages on it now that we've built, so you can go and check it out. And the other thing you can do is you can get an eval. So anyone with an ArcGIS Online identity can get an evaluation of Navigator and get that loaded up on their device and try it out. Okay, and the same thing goes with Collector or any of the other apps. You can always get an eval for those. Okay, so coming back to talking about Collector, working offline is something that we turned on like I want to say like about 4 or 5 months ago. So the online capability, a great way to work when you've got areas of no connectivity. So once again, you're like up in a wilderness area, or you're just in a location where you don't have any connection. You've got an iPad that's only Wi-Fi. You don't have a hotspot. It's Wi-Fi only. You don't have a 3 or 4G plan on the device. That's not a problem. Okay, so what you can do is you can take and download the base map information and the operational layer information right to your device, and then take it out in the field. All right, so all you have to have is a sync-enabled service. I'm going to show you what that looks like, or from your server. Okay, if you're using Portal for ArcGIS or ArcGIS Online, and the feature service is not hosted in ArcGIS Online, it's actually on your server. We recommend using 10.3.1. There were some bugs in 10.3 using syncing, so that those were all fixed in 10.3.1. So you just have to make sure that sync is enabled, and then a tiled base map service. Okay, so you could use like the ESRI base map, you could use the topographic map, you could use the imagery base map, and what you'll do is you'll actually download that stuff to your device. Okay, so that actually works pretty well. Some tips on this. When you're